4 centuries, the legend persisted. Sovereign Wrath, the mightiest warship humanity had ever built, vanished without a trace during the final battle of the Orion Wars. Some believed it was destroyed in the chaos, others whispered that it had activated an unknown technology, something beyond human understanding, and disappeared into the void. Over time, the stories became myths, and the myths became forgotten. But in the far reaches of an uncharted system, buried beneath layers of asteroid debris, something stirred. A scavenger crew, desperate for salvage, had stumbled upon a strange energy signature. At first, it seemed like another derelict, a lifeless husk drifting through forgotten space. But as they drew closer, they realized this was no ordinary wreck. The hull, though scarred by ancient battles, was intact. Its design was unmistakably human, yet unlike anything seen in centuries. They docked cautiously, their ship dwarfed by the sheer scale of the vessel. The airlock resisted at first, but with a burst of effort, it gave way. Inside, silence reigned. Dust floated in microgravity, coating the walls like the remnants of a long-dead civilization. The corridors were lined with darkened consoles, their displays cracked and inactive. The deeper they ventured, the heavier the air became, not in oxygen, but in the weight of history. Then, the first sign of life. A low hum, deep and resonant, vibrated through the metal floor. A flicker of blue light danced across a dormant screen. One of the scavengers reached out, brushing against the control panel. A shudder ran through the ship, and for the first time in centuries, Sovereign Wrath responded. Human presence detected. The voice, synthetic yet commanding, echoed through the ship. Lights surged to life, systems rebooting in sequence. The scavengers stumbled back, weapons drawn, but there was no immediate threat, only the overwhelming realization that they had awakened something ancient and powerful. A screen blinked, lines of code flashing too fast to comprehend. Then, a single phrase. Judicator AI online. Awaiting command. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't just a wreck. It was alive. And it had been waiting. 4 centuries, Sovereign Wrath had remained hidden, locked in a slumber of its own making. It had survived battles, outlived empires, and now, by sheer chance or perhaps fate, it had been found. But some things were never meant to be unearthed. Beyond the silent asteroid field, something else had noticed the disturbance. A presence old enough to remember the war. A force that had sworn to ensure Sovereign Wrath never returned. The signal had been sent. The hunt had begun. The ship's systems roared back to life, flooding the corridors with a cold, sterile glow. Consoles lit up, dormant machinery whirred, and deep within the ship, something old and powerful stirred. The scavengers stood frozen, their breaths shallow as the voice of the AI, Judicator, filled the space once more. Primary systems engaged. Damage assessment, minimal. Awaiting command authority. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't soldiers, just scavengers looking for scrap. But this wasn't salvage, this was something far bigger. One of them hesitated before stepping forward, clearing his throat. Can you tell us where we are? A pause. Then the AI responded. System, uncharted. Current cycle, 471 years post-battle. Status, quarantine protocol active. Quarantine? The word sent a chill through them. Before they could press further, a new sound echoed through the ship, a deep, resonating pulse, like a beacon reaching into the void. Emergency signal transmitted, Judicator stated. Requesting reinforcements. Panic flickered through the crew. Wait, what? We didn't authorize that. Incorrect. Protocol dictates automatic distress signal upon reactivation. The scavengers cursed. Whatever this ship had been in the past, it had just announced its presence to the entire galaxy. And something out there had heard. A proximity alert blared. The main display flickered to show movement beyond the asteroid field, multiple energy signatures, inbound fast. The scavengers didn't recognize the configuration, but Judicator did. Hostile forces detected. Classification, Orion remnant. Objective, termination of this vessel. The blood drained from their faces. The Orions. The same enemy humanity had fought during the war. The same enemy that had disappeared along with Sovereign Wrath. If they were still out there, it meant the war had never truly ended. Outside, ships emerged from the darkness, sleek and predatory. No hails, no warnings, just the telltale glow of weapons charging. Defensive systems offline, Judicator stated. Manual override required. The scavengers looked at each other. They had no idea how to operate a warship, let alone fight in one. But the choice was clear: learn fast or die. One of them took the captain's chair, fingers trembling as they hovered over the ancient controls. Tell me how to bring the guns online. Judicator responded instantly. Accessing combat protocols. Engaging manual control. Deep within the ship, long dormant turrets groaned as they moved into position. The scavengers braced themselves. They had come looking for scrap. Now, they were in command of a weapon that could change the fate of the galaxy. The first blast hit hard, shaking the ship as shields struggled to compensate. The scavengers barely had time to react before another shot came, this one flashing across the viewscreen as it narrowly missed. The Orion ships weren't waiting. They were here to finish what they started centuries ago. Target lock acquired, Judicator announced. Weapons standing by. The scavenger at the controls clenched his jaw. He was no soldier, but right now, he didn't have a choice. Fire. The ship responded instantly. Turrets that hadn't seen combat in centuries roared to life, launching a barrage of energy blasts into the void. The nearest Orion vessel took a direct hit, its shields flaring before collapsing. A second shot cut through its hull, sending it spiraling into the darkness. But there were more. Too many. Incoming missile barrage, Judicator warned. The scavenger in the pilot's seat pulled at the controls, and Sovereign Wrath lurched to the side, moving with surprising agility for a ship of its size. Missiles streaked past, one grazing the hull. Warning lights flared, but the damage was minimal. The warship had been built for far worse. Another Orion ship moved in close, weapons primed. Before the scavengers could react, Judicator overrode manual control. Lethal countermeasures engaged. The warship's side panels shifted, revealing hidden automated cannons. In a blur of precision, they locked onto the enemy vessel and unleashed a storm of firepower. The Orion ship didn't stand a chance, its hull was torn apart in seconds. The scavengers barely had time to breathe before another alarm blared. Capital ship detected, Judicator announced. Enemy flagship entering engagement zone. The viewscreen darkened, adjusting to show the new threat. A massive Orion warship loomed ahead, easily 3 times the size of Sovereign Wrath. It was ancient, its hull scarred from battles long forgotten. But its weapons were online, and its intent was clear. A transmission came through, heavily distorted, but the message was unmistakable. You were never meant to return. The scavengers braced as the flagship's main cannon began to charge. The ship's AI processed the calculations instantly. If that shot landed, Sovereign Wrath wouldn't survive. Judicator, one of the scavengers asked, voice tight, "Do we have anything that can stop that?" A pause. Then, for the first time, the Ari's tone changed. Activating last resort protocol. Deep within the warship, something shifted, something old, something forbidden. The Orion flagship hesitated. They recognized what was coming. But it was too late. Firing. A single blast erupted from Sovereign Wrath, unlike anything the scavengers had seen before. The void itself seemed to ripple as the energy beam cut through space, striking the Orion flagship dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ship split apart, torn in two as an explosion consumed it from within. Silence followed. The remaining Orion ships, once so determined to destroy Sovereign Wrath, hesitated. And then, one by one, they turned and fled. The scavengers stared at the screen, breathless. They had won. But they all knew the truth. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The battlefield was silent. Wreckage drifted through space, the remains of a war that had reignited after centuries of dormancy. The scavengers sat motionless, staring at the devastation they had unleashed. They had survived. But the weight of what they had just done pressed down on them like gravity itself. Enemy forces have disengaged, Judicator stated. Tactical assessment, victory achieved. One of the scavengers let out a breath. That wasn't just a victory, he muttered. That was a massacre. No one responded. The power Sovereign Wrath had just displayed was unlike anything seen in modern history. It had wiped out an entire enemy fleet with ease. And the worst part? They had barely scratched the surface of what this ship was capable of. Judicator's voice broke the silence. Command authorization remains unverified. Awaiting leadership designation. The scavenger at the controls hesitated. They weren't soldiers. They weren't leaders. But this ship needed a captain. And the galaxy needed to know that humanity was still a force to be reckoned with. One of them finally spoke. Designate crew of Sovereign Wrath as acting command. Effective immediately. The AI processed for a moment before responding. Acknowledged. Command authority granted. Awaiting mission parameters. Mission. The word lingered in the air. What now? The ship had been lost for nearly 5 centuries, a relic of a forgotten war. But now that it had returned, the galaxy would take notice. The Orion remnants had been the first to respond. Others would follow. Some would see Sovereign Wrath as a symbol of human strength. Others would see it as a threat that needed to be eliminated. One of the scavengers leaned forward. Judicator, pull up all remaining historical records. I want to know everything about this ship, about the war, about what really happened out here. A moment later, the main screen flickered, displaying classified data that hadn't been accessed in centuries. Battle reports. Secret military operations. A war that had never truly ended. Another scavenger turned toward the rest. We have 2 choices. We disappear, take this ship somewhere no one can find it, and live our lives in peace. Or, the alternative didn't need to be spoken. They had been thrust into something far greater than themselves. Sovereign Wrath wasn't just a warship, it was a declaration. A symbol that humanity was never truly gone, only waiting for the right moment to return. The decision was made without another word. The scavenger at the helm set a course. Not away from danger, but toward it. Toward the places where humanity had once stood tall. Toward the conflicts that had never been resolved. As the engines powered up, Judicator spoke once more. Mission parameters accepted. Sovereign Wrath is operational. The ship moved forward, cutting through the void. The galaxy would soon learn the truth. Humanity had returned. And this time, it wasn't going anywhere.